Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Michigan Birding 101. Today is our fourth and final class in our spring series. And today we're going to be talking all about where and when and how to get out and bird in the state of Michigan. We're so excited to have you here again. And we just want to say a big thank you to all of those who have joined us live for the last three classes. This is always Cindy and I's one of I would say it's my favorite program of the year. It's just a lot of fun to share our enthusiasm for birds and bird conservation. And we hope that some of that enthusiasm is caught on to those of you that have been watching and that you're excited to get out there and go birding and to also really think about how we can care for and protect our Great Lakes and our birds. All right, with that, we're going to today start off with a review. So we went through a lot in the last three classes, a lot in those last three classes. So if you remember our first class in beginning birding, we talked about how to set up and use your binoculars, and we'll review that today. We talked a little bit about field guides and also on how to identify birds. And so we'll also practice that identification skill again. These are the core basics of how to become a birder. And with these kind of three things set up, your binoculars, your guide, and your ability to identify birds, you could be a birder anywhere in the world and participate in this awesome hobby. Our second week was we covered backyard birding. So specifically what the species you might see in Michigan in your backyard. So we went through those 20 or 30 or so species that are most common in backyards in Michigan. And we practiced and we practiced and we practiced. And hopefully you've been practicing the last few weeks as you have had birds show up in your own backyards. And then we also covered how to feed birds and how to make sure to do that safely and what kind of things to feed. So we'll review a little bit of that too. And lastly, last week we covered birding ethics. We covered the ABA Code of Ethics, which I summarized this way: be good to birds, be good to other birders, and be good according to the law and non-birders, right? So it's really just about using common sense and being good. But I added that caveat on the first one that you have to know the bird's needs because birds are not humans and they don't have the same needs or the same biology. So things that we do that we think might be helping the birds isn't always necessarily the case if we don't do our research. So do your research. Reduce backyard threats to birds and improve your backyard habitat. So hopefully you found those three classes helpful, and we're going to kind of hop right into it right now. So when we start off with our first week, we start off about thinking there are four things that you should probably start off adjusting on your binoculars almost every time you pick them up. Why don't you go ahead and throw it into the chat if you know what some of the things are when you're setting your binoculars up to use? And I got my binoculars here. There's kind of four things that you might want to start by adjusting. What are some of the first things? Anyone can go ahead and throw that in the chat, or if you're watching this as a recording, try to think about what were some of the core things I need to adjust on my binoculars to make sure they work for me? So one of our superstars here and a couple others, Don's as well, you have mentioned that you want to adjust the eye cups. So the first thing is to make sure the cups are either up or down based on if you have glasses or not. So that's the first one. And then a few other folks have got it. You want to adjust, secondly, the center hinge. So adjust the eye cup, then the center hinge. That is so that you can adjust them to the length of your eyes. And even if you set them up once, they're going to get off. They're going to get squished or mushed every time. So you're always going to have to keep doing that. The third one, a few folks have gotten on there. Nice job, Anne, is to adjust the center focus. So this is when you would raise them up after having adjusted the width. Then you get them in focus. And lastly, the last one is a bit of a challenge, but I see a number of you already have it, which is to adjust the diopter. That's right. So the top part here on your right barrel has an actual adjuster so you can differentiate your two eyes between their strengths, because we don't always have our eyes at the same strength. Even with corrective lenses, sometimes our eyes can get tired, and it's good to adjust your diopter on a regular basis. So nice job. Way to go reviewing that there. And I love this image from astronomy.com. And shows a little bit more of the inner workings in case you've ever been curious about how light passes through your binoculars. But anyway, it's those prisms that and the lenses that all kind of help everything get adjusted. Okay, well, that's how we use our binoculars, or at least set them up. Now let's think about if we want to look at a bird through our binoculars, how do we do that? Because it's not as easy as it sounds. If you just instantly stick your binoculars up and start looking around for birds, you're going to get nauseous and you're going to get dizzy, and it's going to be really challenging. So if you want to practice this, and you have your binoculars with you, I'm going to play this video to give you a chance to practice. Take your binoculars, back up from the screen at least 10, 15 feet so you can adjust and focus on the screen, and go ahead and practice the key to this. So I'm going to start playing this video, and what you're going to do is you want to first find the bird with your eyes. You don't instantly lift up the binoculars until you've got that bird locked on. Once your eyes are locked on the bird, you don't break that. All right, there's another bird, but you don't want to get distracted. Focus on the bird and lift your binoculars up without breaking that eye contact. And now I've got the birds in my binocular, and I can kind of slowly move around with it, since this video is thankfully in slow motion. And as you can see with flying birds, it can be challenging to get them in your binoculars. When you lower your binoculars down again, you'll want to look for that bird with your naked eye. Oh, it's gone. Okay. So now that that bird's gone, we might look around with our naked eyes to look. Oh, there's a second bird. So we find it with our eyes, lock our eyes on that bird, raise the binoculars without looking away, and voila, we are taking a nice look at this eagle or kite from some other continent. I'm not sure what species this is. Anyway, so that's the key, again, to getting those birds in your binoculars. Generally, unless the bird's really far away, you want to find the bird with your eyes, lock eyes on that bird, then raise your binoculars. So hopefully you've been able to practice that a little bit and found that helpful. Oh, I think we're going to just keep moving along, but I do want to remind you to put questions into the Q&A. And if you're watching this live, we will answer those questions at the end today. All right, let's move on to our next task, which is, how do we identify the birds? How do we identify the birds? Well, if we see a bird, our first key or first piece of thing we want to do is observe the bird as long as possible. It's often an instinct to grab your field guide and try to go right to that and then look at the bird and look at your field guide, but that generally doesn't work because, well, birds move and they're not going to give you all day to watch it unless you're really lucky or it's a bird that's asleep. But for general birds that are moving around, you want to observe it as long as possible. Now, if you know the name of this bird, do not say it yet. What I want you to do, though, is put some observations. So take some observations of this bird right now. What are some of the things you notice about the structure, the pattern, the relative size, maybe not behavior from this, but possibly, and then also location or habitat. Go ahead and put those things you notice about this bird in the chat. So somebody noticed that the feathers on this bird are edged in a little bit of white, and that's a really interesting feature, and that's a good feature. Yeah, this bird has a long tail, and maybe another way we could say that is relative to that body of the bird, the tail is almost equal length to the body of the bird. And so that helps clarify, what we mean when we say long. Somebody else noticed the beak, which is half the size of the head. That's a good job referencing the relative size of that bird. Relative to itself is one of the better things. And then somebody did notice, Judy noticed, that this bird's behavior is that it's perching. Perching birds are a unique category of birds. Not all birds perch on twigs or things. Some just stand on the ground and some just swim in the water. So this bird doesn't seem to have a clear eye ring, but it does seem to have chest stripes or speckling and kind of that mottledness on the back. Somebody else noted robin size. So that's a great relative size comparison. This bird is relatively close to a robin size. I don't know how you knew that, but great job. And so you're getting really good, many of you, at kind of starting to pick up on this, to avoid too much of things like color, because color can be disorienting based on the lighting, and also avoiding things too much like small or big, generically rather relatively. So good job. And if you know what category this bird is, it's actually in the blackbird family, Icteridae. Icteridae includes the grackles, the blackbirds, the cowbirds, the meadowlarks, and the orioles, actually. They're very closely related. But if you take a look at this here, you'll notice that a lot of these are mostly female birds, and a lot of the female blackbirds don't look quite as just uniformly dark and shiny. So if we start to look for a bird that has that kind of very distinct bill shape, that's very cone-like, almost dagger-like, and we can kind of start to cross off the orioles. Those are too colorful. We can cross off the yellow and the meadowlarks, since we don't see that black eye line there. And we can kind of start to get down to some of the more kind of more blurry or streaky birds here. And this is from the Sibley Guide, by the way. This is from the Sibley Guide of Birds in North America. It has these great categories at the start. So once we get down here, take a guess. If you have your chat open, go ahead and take a guess. What species do you think this bird might be, now that we've got it down to just the streaky ones? And yes, tricolored blackbird or red-winged blackbird are a couple of guesses we could have here. And they both look very similar, but they're definitely those streaky birds. They don't, this bobolink has a little bit too much uniformity, and also its bill is much more conical and blunt. The rusty blackbird and brewer's blackbird lack the stripes, and also rusty blackbird has a pale eye. Same thing with the grackles. They all have pale eyes, whereas this bird has a dark eye. So when we get down to those last two, the tricolored and red-winged blackbird, we can open up our books and find that tricolor would be very rare, not possible really in this area. This is a female red-winged blackbird. The brown-headed cowbird can look a little streaky, but again, the brown-headed cowbird has a very conical-like bill. It's not as long and as narrow as this bird's bill. And also the brown-headed cowbird has a much shorter tail length relative to its body. A little bit chunkier too. And so this is a red-winged blackbird, but it is a female. And I point this one out because they might be showing up your feeders right now. The males have just started to show up because it's spring migration. They're singing their beautiful songs that make us feel like we can come alive again because winter is over. Oh no, it's recorded. I just said that, but we're still in the midst of it. But according to the blackbirds, spring is here, and the males show up first to claim territory. But then we're going to start seeing big flocks of female birds coming in once the males have set up territory that are looking for a mate and a place to build a nest. And those females are often one of the most confusing backyard birds. So now you know how to look for that very unique bill shape, that long tail, and that streaky color, which is the female red-winged blackbird. Good job. All right. So that was a lot of our first first week of class. Our second week of class, we focused a lot more on the backyard birds. So we did a lot of that backyard bird identification, just like we did with the red wing there. But we also talked about feeder stations. And some of these feeder stations, I think, are good examples of some of the things you want to incorporate. First off, by placing feeders at different elevations, you really open up a lot more possibility for your birds, particularly by providing a ground feeder with corn. You are offering us a more desirable spot for your squirrels who don't have to climb up all the way onto your bird feeder hangers and could just go right to the ground and gorge on sheep corn and hopefully leave your black oil sunflower seeds alone, which are a lot more expensive, but also the birds' favorites. So having different levels and elevations can be really helpful. Also having many types of feeders. Certain feeders will work for different kinds of seeds, and diversifying your seeds is another way to attract more diverse species and also help alleviate competition issues between squirrels or blackbirds or things like that. Lastly, you can incorporate many other features besides seed feeders, like a hummingbird feeder where you provide nectar, a water structure, as long as you clean something like that really regularly, or you have flowing water, and also native plants like these black-eyed Susans, maybe this northern white cedar here. These are going to provide hundreds, if not thousands of bugs for your birds, which you may be thinking to yourself, bugs? I don't want bugs in my backyard. But you're going to be attracting a buffet for the birds. And by planting native plants, you'll attract a diversity of insects, which may actually attract predator insects that help keep some of the pests like flies and mosquitoes down. So you'll have a much more balanced ecosystem by planting native. So hopefully that was a quick recap where you're able to kind of drum some of those things back up. If you haven't started feeding the birds, I just encourage you to get a suet feeder. It's like one of the easiest things, lowest maintenance. Put that on a tree like you see in the back here connected to this tree. And you will now start attracting woodpeckers and also songbirds that come in for a little treat, especially in the winter months. So go ahead and feed the birds. It's an awesome thing to do. All right. Which of these threats do you think are threats to native birds. So this was the other thing we talked about. Besides feeding the birds and native habitat, we also want to reduce threats. So go ahead and just in your mind, think of an answer, or you can throw it into the chat. And I see a lot of folks are answering already. And so the answer is E. All the above are potential threats. Cats, windows, pesticides, and non-native plants. These can all be things that really endanger birds. In fact, cats kill 2 billion birds a year, so keeping your cats indoors is a really good solution to solving that problem. In this picture, how many threats to birds can you see? So this was a picture we threw up last week and had you guess A, B, or C. Do you think there's 1 to 2 threats here, 3 to 4 threats, or 5+ threats? How many threats are potentially here? This is a beautiful yard. It has a lot of diverse plantings, which is definitely better than just having a straight lawn. You might have a native tree there. So this is definitely not a bad yard for birds, but there are some threats here. And if you've answered, most people are starting to answer, it is 5+. So if you remember from last week, things like outdoor lights at night, you can see the cat scratcher outside, meaning outdoor cat, that's a no-no. Reflective windows without coverings, although some of them have blinds on them, which is at least a baseline, a better way to cut down on reflectivity. Crab grass killer, insecticides, and possibly purple loosestrife. So nice job, folks. That was our review from the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to kind of give that quick rundown. Hopefully it helped you remember some of the things and gives you some targets for practice, like those bird identifications or thinking about your backyard. If you have any questions from those first 3 weeks, put them in the Q&A. We're going to have extra time tonight for questions. So I really hope that we can get to all the questions. And if you have any questions from the last 3 weeks, don't wait, just go ahead, open up that Q&A and put them in there now while you're thinking about it, and we'll get to them at the end. Also, though, feel free to share resources and throw other ideas into the chat. That's our social space. And I'm going to specifically ask you to share some of your great birding resources in the chat. But remember, all questions should go in the Q&A or we'll miss them. All right, moving on. Today, we're going to talk about Michigan birding. So our objectives for today, number 1, have fun, get your questions answered, and see some cool birds. We're going to talk about some incredible birds today and some incredible birding locations. So I hope you get really excited because spring migration is here and it's time to get out there and go birding. If you haven't left your house to go birding before, I really encourage you to try it, even if it's just a local park or somewhere within a 5-mile radius. It's great to explore new areas. I also want to help you learn how to find other birders and find your birding community. It's one of the most essential things to becoming a better birder and to be and it's fun. It's the social part. We're made for connection. We're made for social interaction. And so finding a birding community can be a great way to get more social interaction. Lastly, I also want to give you some resources today to help plan out your next Michigan birding trip. There are a number of resources online, as well as paper copies that you can use to find where to go birding. So let's dive into that. Find your Michigan birding community, just like swallows find their community. Swallows are migrating through very shortly here, probably by April, they'll start coming in with the tree swallows, and they migrate often in mixed flocks. And so I think they're a great example of community where you can have 4 or 5 or even 6 species of swallows and martins in a flock at the same time. So where can you find other birders? Birding is a very popular hobby. Almost 20% of U.S. Residents consider themselves bird watchers at some point. But birders that are willing to leave their house or get really into the weeds on ID, that's a little harder to find sometimes. But thankfully, we have some great resources in our state. One of the best is a stellar server on Discord we have called the Michigan Birding Discord server. Now, it's a little bit of a learning curve to learn this technology, but there are a lot of great how-tos online, and learning something new is always a good challenge to give ourselves. And so this community has channels for every region of the state. It's split up by counties or sometimes a few counties lumped together, and there's rare bird alerts, there's chat groups, there's all sorts of different channels in there where you can ask about bird ID, or you can ask about where's good places to go birding. So you can go through those channels and find your community in there, either your local community or a community for chatting and getting good tips. Also, Facebook and Instagram, they have a lot of great groups that are primarily focused on picture sharing. So if you're looking for good pictures of birds, Michigan Birding or Michigan Bird Watching or Bird Watchers of Michigan, these are all three groups that are great place to just see cool pictures of birds and see what other people are seeing around the state. There's also a few other great resources on here. Instagram is another great place to see cool bird pictures. Follow the Michigan Audubon Club, Bird Chick, hashtag follows us the hashtag birds or Audubon Society or many others. They're a great way to see cool pictures of birds. And oftentimes they'll provide educational information. One of my favorites is Rosemary Mosco, who has some great books. She does illustrations, so they're not necessarily, they're almost cartoon-like or comic-like illustrations, but they provide great, oftentimes comical info about birds. So I've learned so much of that. And just an example, if you find those cool Instagram channels, and if you know of any Instagram or Facebook groups or other places where you've learned a lot about birds, please go ahead and put that in the chat. All right. And I see some questions in the chat. So remember, we're going to miss your questions in the chat. Put them in the Q&A section if you have questions, but share your resources and other cool things you found in the chat. All right, moving on. So this is an online group, it's good, and it can lead to in-person stuff. But in-person birding is really a joy, especially when you can do it with experienced birders. You can learn a lot more. And so there are a number of groups we have in the state of Michigan that can help you connect with birders in real life. Those online sources also can lead to those meetups as well. But Michigan Audubon has 32 regional chapters around the state, and these regional chapters vary from very small to rather big. Things like the Grand Rapids Audubon Club, the Laughing Whitefish Bird Alliance in Marquette, the Sioux Naturalists, Au Valley Audubon. There is a whole list of their chapters. You can see them listed here. They're almost in every part of the state. So hopefully you can find your local Michigan Audubon chapter, or potentially National Audubon. National Audubon is a separate organization from the state organization, but they also have a few chapters, more regional chapters. Audubon Great Lakes, based out of Chicago, that also runs the My Bird initiative. The Detroit Bird Alliance is a local chapter in Detroit that's very active, as well as the Oakland Audubon. Both of these two groups are very active, especially if you're in the Detroit metro area. Check them out. And lastly, the American Birding Association. They don't have a ton of meetups in person, but they do offer a huge wealth of resources to birders. So I highly recommend you check them out. They have a great magazine that comes out every month. They have a podcast, which is just wonderful, but they also do various meetups around the country, and as well as a young birder camp. I also threw in there the Michigan Young Birder Camp, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So those are some of the ways that you can find birders. If you know other ways to find birders, please go ahead and put that in the chat. It can be often hard to find other birders, but they're out there, and when we find each other, we often click very quickly, so that we then start and often get distracted very quickly too, because it's really about those birds, and it's a joy to enjoy birds with other people. Now, if you're looking for ways to build your skills in Michigan, just like the Northern Parula builds these incredible nests, there are a variety of classes, workshops, and meetups around the state that you can seek out to, get a little more info and to learn how to bird better. I will just point out the Northern Parula is one of my favorite spring migrants. You can see that on the left there. That's the male with this beautiful burnt orange bib, just these incredible colors. This is one of those tiny birds that's flying all the way from South America, Central America, all the way up here to Michigan just to breed. Even though it only weighs 2/4, it's a tiny little being, and yet it's flying thousands of miles. And then when it flies those thousands of miles, it builds a nest out of hanging lichen, and it actually creates a little basket. You can see the bird sitting in the middle. That's a female sitting on a nest, which is actually woven out of the basket-like structure, woven out of lichen that hangs off of our spruce trees and other kind of boreal forest trees. And in that last photo, you can see the young bird kind of finally emerging out of that little basket. It's just incredible, the things that birds are able to do. These tiny little creatures flying thousands of miles, then to construct an entire structure just to raise its youngin. Wow. Okay. So you can build your skills too. If that little bird can fly across a continent and then build that, you can also build your skills. And this takes a little bit of just searching for what's in your area, but there are a few particular places to look. And I just did some Google searching across Michigan to see what is out there. One of the things that is often overlooked are community colleges. A number of community colleges and even some four-year institutions can offer summer classes and sometimes summer birding classes. Central Michigan University is offering a birding on Beaver Island and bird science class. The U of N biostation sometimes offers public classes. There are a variety of places where you can look at your university or community college and see if they're offering something. Nature centers like the Seven Ponds Nature Center and Blandford Nature Center and many other offer bird related activities and classes as well. So if you are lucky enough to have a nature center, often they're housed within a metro park or a county park, and sometimes they're independent. Those are great places to get a little more info on birds. Libraries are a fantastic resource. You probably know this already, but libraries are like the lifeblood of many communities. They provide a huge amount of services, especially to low-income individuals. But the libraries are now really getting on this birding craze too. I've been approached by a couple libraries already to offer this class again. I don't think I'm going to be able to travel around the state doing that, but I do presentations regularly at libraries. I know Greg Bodker's got one lined up at a library downstate, and there's a number of others. So check out those libraries. They're really good sources for classes and sometimes, of course, just books. Camps and workshops like the Winged Wonders Traveling Camp, I'll talk about a little later. And then there's online classes. Bird Academy from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is a great resource. They have all sorts of classes. And there are many other companies out there that offer online bird classes. So check those out. And if you've taken any, share that in the chat. The Kellogg Bird Sanctuary is another great one. I've got a slide for them specifically in a little bit. So if you know of any other good resources, do share that in the chat. But these are some of the places I encourage you to check out and to look around if you're looking to build your birding skills. Here's a few examples of those library parks and nature centers. Blandford Nature Center in Grand Rapids, which is like one of my favorite places ever. I remember going there to band birds with my high schoolers a number of years ago when I was a high school teacher down there. They are offering a spring migration bird bonanza on May 18th. And so that's coming up pretty soon. Over at the Stage Nature Center in Troy, they're calling it a spring birding festival. So it's a one-day event on May 18th, full of cool crafts, activities, things to do with kids, as well as a birding hike. Flat River Community Library. That's, like I said, my pal Greg Bodker, he's offering a birding class there at 6 p.m. And so if you want to continue to build your skills, libraries are a great way. So just a little sampling. And if you know of other stuff, again, put it in the chat. Somebody else mentioned Wingspan. That's a great resource. It's almost like a bird book. Actually, it's a competitive strategy game, but it has you building bird habitats and bird nests, and it's all accurate because it was created by a birder. So that's a great one. Oh, somebody else mentioned land conservancies or conservation districts. Those are other great resources. The Saginaw Bay Land and Conservation District is an awesome resource. Belle Isle Nature Center is another great nature center. Yes. So there are, the more you start looking, the more you realize that birding is available in your own backyard, in your own town, in your own area, and you can continue to build these skills that you've started today. If you want to go big and experience like a big fun event, check out a birding festival. Now, Michigan's birding festivals have kind of gone through a transition period since COVID. Some of our biggest festivals are unfortunately no longer taking place, but there's still a few around, and there's some new up and coming festivals as well. In Manistee, Michigan, Warbler Wonderland is taking place on May 18th through 19th. They had their first festival last year, and it's an awesome place. It's in the Upper Peninsula. The AuSable Valley Audubon is offering the Tawas Point Spring Birding Celebration, May 17th and 18th, which will have volunteers there helping you bird as you walk along the point. The Elba Leopold Festival is an all-around fantastic nature festival, and I might be biased because I'm from that area and I help with it and lead trips. But we offer birding trips, trips, mushroom and orchid trips, wildflowers, kayaking trips, geology, all sorts of amazing presentations. And of course, it's all dedicated to Elva Leopold, who was one of the founders of the conservation movement, the land ethics movement, and who grew up submarine in Michigan in the Lachino Islands. So check that one out. Our registration opens soon. The Kirtland's Warbler Festival has been back in a new, strong way. It's been around for a long time. In the last couple of years, it's been revived, and it's an awesome time down in Grayling. Also, the first weekend in June. And so you got to get down there and see the Kirtlands, but being there for the festival is a really fun time and a fun event. So hit up the festivals, and again, feel free to share in the chat too. But yeah, there are a number of other close by festivals that are probably the biggest festivals for bird, at least for spring warbler migration in the country. So although they're not in our state, they're right next door. The biggest week in American birding, self-proclaimed, but probably rightly so, is at Magee Marsh and the Black Swamp Bird Observatory, which is right south of the border in Ohio. And so if you have a chance to get that one, that is just a bonanza. There are tons of people, but it's a really fun atmosphere. The Indiana Dunes Birding Festival is another excellent birding festival right south of the border on Lake Michigan. So just south of the St. Joe and Grand Rapids kind of areas, just right down into Indiana in the national park there. It's a fantastic birding festival. And Point Pelee over in Canada has one of the biggest bird species lists anywhere in the Midwest region. And that is where I grew up going as a kid to that festival. It sparked a passion in me because right at the tip, they just have all these warblers at these low bushes with very few leaves. And it's just a fantastic time. So you can go to the All About Birds festival and event listing there. And we'll share that as well in the resources we email or in the comments below the video. So check out your local birding festival if you're ready to really be around a lot of people, but to have a lot of fun, to just get a whirlwind of birding, go to a birding festival. There's nothing quite like it. Michigan Audubon, I got to give them another shout out. They offer a variety of tours. So they've kind of shifted from festivals to tours, but there's some great tours. They offer cerulean warbler tours down in Southwest Michigan in Hastings. This is a very unique and fantastic species, the cerulean warbler. There's Kirtland Warblers tours that take place May 25th through June 30th in the Grayling area. There's a beginning birders tour, a photography tour, and a couple of fall tours as well that'll be available. And so if you're looking for something a little more intensive, whether it's a one-day cerulean warbler or Kirtland Warbler tour, which are pretty low cost, or a more intensive, slightly higher cost, but still very reasonably priced tour, check out the Michigan Audubon website. If you're a young birder, a youthful birder, I grew up birding starting at the age of 6, and it's so much fun and it's so great to have that as a skill that you start at a young age. It really opens your eyes not just to birds, but to observation and understanding the world around you. And thankfully, Michigan Audubon has their Young Birders Networks. You can see they have a number of meetups around the state this year, as well as virtual meetings, and their Young Birder Camp, which is for ages 13 to 18. Michigan State University Extension is also offering a number of bird youth activities. Look at your local 4-H and ask if they have a bird club. And if they don't, see if they're interested in starting one. Each county in Michigan has a local 4-H chapter, and many of them do outdoor and wildlife related classes. In addition, 4-H is offering their Winged Wonder class July 15th through the 19th for 9 to 13-year-olds. I go to that each year. I brought my son last year. It's a fantastic time, and it includes a couple of nights of camping at the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary, which nobody else gets to do. So if you have know of a youth in that age range, highly encourage you to send them off there. All right. A couple other MSU specific resources. So somebody mentioned already the Kellogg Biological Station, which is in the Kalamazoo area. And they have specifically a subunit, the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary, which is around a beautiful little lake. And you can actually go to their website and check out a live stream of the trumpeter swans that are there. This is one of the birthplaces of trumpeter swan reintroduction. Trumpeter swans went extinct in the Midwest, but they were brought all the way from Alaska, their eggs, to the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary, and they actually still have the original egg incubator there. It's like from the 1940s or 50s or something. It's incredible. And that is where trumpeter swans were reestablished to eventually be brought up to Seney National Wildlife Refuge. And now trumpeter swans can be found across the Midwest again in the eastern US because of this effort there. But that all being said, it's a great place to go birding. They have a wonderful set of resources there, good interpretive signs. They have raptors that are um, rehabilitated raptors, so they are in captivity. They can't be released because they're injuries, but they make for great observation opportunities. They're really well cared for. They also offer birded guided hikes, and they even offer an ornithology class that starts in April. So if you're looking to really get into it more, check out that class. Another wonderful Michigan bird resource is the Michigan State Bird Observatory. They have fall banding at the Burke Lake Banding Station, as well as summer banding and spring events at the Corey Marsh Preserve. And so check out the Michigan State Bird Observatory. Jen Owens, Dr. Jen Owens is an incredible researcher who also has a passion for outreach and connecting the public to the work that they are doing there. So they're always open to having folks. And if you want to see birds in the hand, it's a really neat experience to see bird banding and what that all entails. So check out these other Michigan State University bird resources. I didn't have a slide for it, but also the Natural Resource Museum on campus sometimes has bird exhibits, as well as a great ornithologist, Pam Rasmussen, who works there. All right, now one more thing, and this is primarily for those of you watching this live. We're going to attempt our first go around of Michigan Birding 101 Spring Field Trip Series. That's right. We're going to come around the state to you and have a chance to hopefully get out and bird with you. Chance to put your skills to the test. So around sometime next week, you're going to get an email and you can sign up for these bird trips that we're going to do around the state. They're all around a couple hours. They'll be free, but they're at some of my favorite places to go birding around the state. So the first one we're going to do is in April 14th at Muskegon. We're going to visit the Muskegon Wastewater, one of the top birding spots in the state. We're also going to go to Grand Rapids. We're going to try to hit up Millennium Park. I did not fix my typo on here. We're not going to Blandford Nature Center because that's not in Lansing. We're going to go to one of the Lansing Nature Centers, but we'll be in Lansing on the 19th. And then we're also going to hit up Belle Isle on the evening of the 19th over in Detroit. We're then going to do a couple up in my home region in Sault Ste. Marie. We're going to do a little birding around my research center here that I'm housed in, as well as one at the Pickford Monuskin potholes where we'll see sharp-tailed grouse among many other species. And last but not least, got to get to Tawas Point. It's a spring kind of, I do a spring migration to some of these hot spots, and Tawas is one I love to get to every spring. So if you're around May 23rd, come join me out there. Again, you'll see an email next week, and you'll be able to sign up for these. They are free. I do ask that you only sign up if you're absolutely sure you're going to go, because they're free. A lot of people are ready to sign up, but we only have limited space to 15 individuals. So please make sure if you're signing up, you're fully committed to attending so that everyone that wants to go has a chance to go. Okay, well, there's some resources for you. I just threw a lot at you. And don't worry if you don't remember all this. We're going to be sharing this with the links either in the comments or in the email to you. And, it's always a good opportunity to get out there and try some new things. Now, if you're not really looking for a social experience, or you just really want to figure out how do I navigate this on my own, here's some resources to help you navigate your own birding experience. First, this isn't really a resource, but rather a state of mind. I want to encourage you to embrace all 4 seasons of birding in Michigan. We're lucky enough to live in a state that has 4 seasons. I don't know if you lived in a state that doesn't. It can be nice to have sunshine all year. Yes, that's true. The winters are long, but the change in the seasons is something that kind of reinvigorates me every year and gets me excited. And a big part of that is because I know the change in the birds that are coming. So in the winter, this is a great time for beginning birders because we have a lot less species in the winter. Most of our species are gone. But we do have some incredibly unique species around. Things like our pine siskins that are all over the state this year are an awesome eruptive finch that we're getting. If you're in the northern parts of the state, things like pine grosbeaks only come around in the winter. And so there's a lot of unique species, and feeders become very active in the winter too. So this is a great time of year to really kind of get down pack those less species that are here. Spring is the rush, right? Spring is max diversity in the shortest amount of time. The birds are heading to their breeding habitats, and really, spring is a concentrated insanity that is just a real joy to be a part of if you're a birder. Every week in May is literally just a cornucopia of colors in the trees. If you look up at the warblers and the tanagers and the vireos and all the orioles that are coming through in big, big numbers, we literally have millions of birds flying over our state every night in the spring. So spring is the rush. It's the fun time. Summer is when birds are breeding, and so they're on habitat. They're making their calls and they're performing their breeding behaviors or their territorial behaviors, and these are really fascinating. So I love the summer for a chance to really get to know a bird species better. Gives you a really good idea of what's breeding in your own area, what's in your own backyard that's making nests. You may be surprised to find out there could be two, three, four, or even more species in your own backyard. Fall is another migration season, but unlike the concentrated rush of the spring, fall is a little more drawn out. It's a lengthy season. It goes much longer, probably twice as long as spring migration. But it's full of great opportunities to build your skills because the birds look very different. They're molting and their colors look different. So it's a great time to focus more on structure and habitat and behavior and things like that. It's also some of the most impressive birding spectacles in our state happen in the fall. Broadwing hawks migrate through the Detroit River Wildlife Refuge in the hundreds of thousands sometimes. An incredible, incredible sight to see thousands of hawks in the air at the same time. Or sandhill cranes at the Hanley Nature Preserve or down in the Jackson area. You can see thousands of sandhill cranes grouping up in the fall. Over in the St. Clair River and on this Lake St. Clair, Lake St. Clair gets groupings of thousands of canvasbacks and redheads and other aphia duck species. So when you want to see these big spectacles, fall is a great time for that. So embrace all four seasons. Don't never think, oh, there's no birds this time of year. No, there are always birds. They're always something different, and it's always fun to kind of get into that seasonality. What are some of your favorite locations in Michigan? Go ahead and throw in the chat, and I'll start to annotate on here some of your favorite locations. Do you have a favorite spot around the state? Maybe not, because you're a new birder and you haven't gotten out much yet. Maybe you are a little more experienced. But I have a few favorite places, and go ahead and put yours in the chat too. I just wanted to share a few of these. Whitefish Point is up in the Upper Peninsula, and it's one of my absolute favorite places to be any time of the year. It's one of the most striking and stunning landscapes you'll ever see. It's dunes in a jack pine sandy forest with beautifully smoothed out stones all along a sandy beach of Lake Superior. It's a really incredible place to go. The Muskegon wastewater, which you might think, well, that's a very big contrast to a wildlife refuge, right? Well, no, actually, this wastewater treatment plant is developed like a wildlife refuge, and wastewater treatment plants in general have a lot of productivity because of all that waste in the water. And so that means there's going to be a ton of birds there. It's a fabulous place to go birding. Belle Isle on the Detroit River is a fantastic place. We actually have this little self-guided, beautiful Belle Isle tour book that Mary Bowling wrote for Michigan Sea Grant. I highly encourage you to check that out. It's a place full of history, full of endless recreation opportunities, and full of birds. I've seen some incredibly rare birds there, like an eider once, scoters in the river, and so it's a really awesome place right in the heart of one of our most beautiful cities, Detroit. The Allegan State Game Area is one of the largest forested areas left in Southwest Michigan. It is a massive tract of forest land, ag land, and wetlands. And it is one of the few places you can see worm-eating warblers, along with cerulean warblers and hooded warblers, and many other southern species that don't make it all the way up to the UP. Copper Harbor in the Keweenaw is, again, a visually striking, magnificent place, but a wonderful place to go. And Muskegon, or the Manuskin Wildlife Management Area in Pickford, my hometown, is one of my favorites. You got to have those hometown favorites, those backyard patches that you love. And of course, another favorite hotspot of mine is my backyard or Cindy's backyard. These are great places where you can, of course, see lots of birds. So never underestimate the importance of your own backyard. All right. So looking in the chat now, we've got a number of ideas that are out there and places that people love. And so I'm just going to go through a few of these. One of a great spot is Fenner Nature Center. I believe that's where we're going to do our birding trip, which is right in the Lansing part of the state. Fenner is a fantastic place. And also anywhere along the Red Cedar River is really good for spring birding. Newaygo County and the Muskegon River, oh, just a birding and kayaking is a fantastic opportunity. If you ever get a chance to get in a kayak, go down the Muskegon River and bring your binoculars with you. It's awesome. Some other comments there. Yeah, Whitefish Point is awesome. And also, it's part of Seney National Wildlife Refuge, but the Seney National Wildlife Refuge, just south of Whitefish Point, is where loons and trumpeter swans breed. And in the June month, you can see their babies. It's a fantastic place. The Keweenaw Bay is a beautiful and awesome place to bird. If you're in Houghton Hancock at Tech or down in L'Anse, this whole bay here gets a wide variety of birds. L'Anse is one of my favorite places to bird, and it's right by Canyon Falls. I don't know if you knew this, Michigan has its own mini Grand Canyon at Canyon Falls there. And then, Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, that's a fantastic place. I've just seen all sorts of good ideas. Wolf Lake State Fish Hatchery, which actually has, I believe, some guided birding tours that are going to be taking place. And it's right next to the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary. Crosswinds Marsh has had some of the rarest gulls in our state, like slatyback gull, but it's a great place. It's actually a wetland mitigation project for the Detroit airport. But it's created this massive, wonderful habitat right next to a landfill, which actually increases the diversity since a lot of gulls come over. Green Bay and the pelican colonies, which is not in Michigan, but Green Bay kind of really reaches all the way up to Escanaba. And so if you're ever up in Escanaba and Big or Little Bay de Noc, we have quite a few white pelicans in there now too that have spread out from Green Bay, where they originally started breeding in the Great Lakes over the last few decades. So lots of wonderful places, and thank you for sharing those. Continue to share them in the chat. I don't want to forget them, but continue to share your great places. I'm going to wrap this up with a couple more things here. One of the other things I wanted to share is that there are some additional online resources that are really helpful. One of them are birding trails. So the Michigan Audubon has these all listed, but each of these are independent community efforts to create driving routes and to tell people where some of the best places are to get out and bird. And I may be missing one of our newer trails on here, so apologies. I might be missing a few of these, but if you go to this website, Michigan Audubon Birding website, we'll put it in the comments or in the email to you, but you can pull up these websites and get a whole list of where to go birding in the area. They're good for planning the trip, but they're even better if you're a local wanting to find new spots to explore. So check out our Michigan Birding Trail Network. They also have paper copies for a lot of these trails. And so if you're more into having a paper copy, that's a great resource. Another one, of course, is eBird, and a few people have mentioned that in the chat already. So eBird is a huge resource that has tons and tons of things. So let's go ahead and check out all what you can do with eBird here real quick once. All right, so eBird is a website where birders can report their birds and what they've been seeing. You need to create an account if you really want to get the max use out of it, but many of the things are accessible without an account. The account's free and easy to make. And you can submit your bird sightings. So this is a great thing to do if you're trying to help with bird conservation and bird science. These bird sightings, you can pick a location and then choose if you're traveling and what your date was. And, then you can actually list, as soon as I get something through here, what birds you were seeing and submit that list. So this is a great resource for birders too, because as you submit your list, it keeps track for you of all of the things you've seen over your life. And so this is my personal profile, and I can see all the species and all this interesting data, like how many checklists I've submitted, how many I have photos of, how many I have audios of. And so this is a really cool feature just for you as a birder too, as if you want to keep your life list electronically. But what I really want to focus on is the explore feature. And so this is a great way to find new things for birding. thing they have is a hotspot feature, and you can see there are a lot of hotspots. But as we zoom in, let's look in the Mount Pleasant area. This is an underbirded area, but even in the underbirded Mount Pleasant area, each of these pins is a location where people are birding regularly enough to create a hotspot here. Even the disc golf course is a good place for birding. You see, it has 63 species at the Michigan Disc Golf CMU disc golf course. And when you click on that hotspot, you can see all of the species that have been seen there, as well as some of the recent checklists. I can click on that and see, oh, on November 1st, somebody saw a Canada goose, a downy woodpecker, and several other things. What's also really cool about this these hotspots is that you can get all sorts of great data. So I'll let you get into that a little more. If you're looking for something a little more specific, like let's say you really want to find a ruddy duck. A ruddy duck is a really cool, oh, I don't know how to spell it. A ruddy duck is a really cool little species that has this bright blue bill, the males do. And let's say I want to look for them just in June and July. You can customize when, what time of year. But once you click that in, this is going to show you every sighting of ruddy duck in recent, that's been submitted to eBird. And when you really get down into the weeds of it, you can see these little pins that show you where everything has been seen. If I look for a species like black-capped chickadee, then, oops. Let's look for American robin, actually. Let's look for American robin, which have been around in recently in decent numbers. This will show me everywhere American robin's been seen lately. And of course, my internet's going a little slow here. But what this will show you is the exact pins on where robins have been seen. And you can see there's a lot of pins for robins. So that is a little overwhelming. But, you know, if I look at this year round, I can also see orange pins, which would be some of the more recent sightings. And you can see now what's in more recent, or you can just make the data just for this year or something like that. So it's a great way to find specific species. Last but not least, I want to really point out the bar charts here. So this is a great way if you want to know what time of year to see what things. So I'm going to choose a county in Michigan. Let's go with Ingham. And what I want to do is get a sense of what species I can expect in my region. And not only can you get what species to expect, but you can also get the frequency by the width of the bars here. So I can see that Canada goose is common year-round in Ingham County, but it's most common in March, April, May, and then in September, October, and November. So that kind of tells you a little bit that Canada goose is most common in migration seasons, but can be found year-round. Might go to a different species like wood duck. Wood ducks are a beautiful duck, but they're pretty rare in January and February, and just starting to come in March with their thickest bars at the end of April and early May. So I know now that the end of April and early May is the best time to see a spring or a migrating wood duck. And you could go through this for all the species that are around. You know, red-breasted mergansers only found in migration, whereas other things like wild turkeys are found more commonly throughout the summer and found year-round. So this is an awesome resource. I hope you get some time to explore it. I, of course, don't have time to get into anything other than just scratching the surface here. But there are all sorts of ways that you can explore with eBird, and it has really revolutionized birding across the world, but especially in areas where it's used heavily, like North America. One more thing, I just got to give a shout out to the Hummingbird Tracker. This is one of Cindy's favorites. This is showing you where those hummingbirds are currently. You can also use eBird for this, but it's a great way to see what migration is happening for hummingbirds specifically and when to get those feeders out. This is from 2023, so I don't know where they are currently. But another great migration forecaster is actually Birdcast. We talked a little bit about this last week, but Birdcast is now this real-time migration forecast that tells you what to expect for bird migration. So this is a picture for tonight, March 14th, 2024 on the bottom right. And you can see that there's going to be some precipitation. And so above that precipitation, migration is pretty low. But if you're in Texas, or especially if you're in the Atlantic coast of Florida and Georgia, looks like it's going to be a pretty good migration night. So you might want to know that tomorrow would be a good morning to get out and go birding for those migrant birds. It's also just neat to see some of the amazing statistics. So right now in Texas, almost 6 million birds flew over Texas last night. Back on March 13th, it was 15 million birds. And this isn't even at the peak yet. And so you could pull this up for Michigan too and see what's flying over at night. It's an amazing tool. All right, we're about near our end of time here and going to get to the Q&A. But I just want to leave you with this last kind of thing for today. So we've talked about how to become a better birder. We've talked about how to care for the birds. And I want to leave you with understanding how connected birds are to our world. The Great Lakes are particularly a bird hotspot. The birds many bird species are super dependent on our Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes are also dependent on the birds. They're inextricably linked. One of the coolest links, I think, happens along all of our areas with rocky shoreline. So this is Lake Huron, and most of Lake Huron shoreline is rocky. There's lots of rocky areas along Lake Erie as well, especially along the north coast, as well as some areas along Lake Michigan that are rocky. And in those rocky areas live midges, which are tiny little bugs that live in the water for sometimes several years. And they'll live in the water for 1 to several years. But then when they become big enough and old enough, they're going to come and up to the surface and metamorphose from a grub or a little midge larva thing to a flying bug. Now, you may have walked along the shorelines of Michigan or been to a wastewater or anywhere around water in May or late April throughout May and maybe brushed a branch. And that's all of a sudden caused a giant swarm of these midges to pop up in the air. If you've ever seen the shorelines of Lake Huron and just shook a branch in May, it'll just explode with these tiny little bugs. These are the midges, and you can see one there that live for years in the water. But every year at the same time of year, they all come to the surface and they all come to land and they all breed like crazy. This is their breeding frenzy. They're only alive for a few weeks. They don't even have mouths, most of the species. They don't feed. They're just on land for a few weeks to breed. And when they come out of the water, they go to the closest plant that they can find, the closest woody vegetation to the shoreline. Now, at the same time that these midges are hatching in the millions, probably billions across our Great Lakes, birds are migrating across the lakes, and particularly these little neotropical warblers. These are some incredible pictures from Pixabay I got, but the black-birding warbler, the black-throated blue warbler, and the black and white warbler, these are some of our couple dozen species of these tiny little birds that just flew from South America, Central America, all the way here. They need to breed. And they've just crossed the Great Lakes, which is a huge undertaking across open water. And when they land around dawn, as the sun rises, these birds land at the first land they see, so right along the shoreline. And what's waiting for these birds the same time of year they come every year? It's that giant swarm of midges that hatches at the exact same time that these birds are migrating through our Great Lakes. That buffet of midges is what gives these birds the ability to continue on to breed. They can restore their fats. They can build back up their resources. They can feast on this buffet of midges, and they can go on to reproduce in our forests where they spread seeds and where they control pests, where they do a huge variety of ecosystem services. The Great Lakes and birds are inexplicably connected, and we are inexplicably connected to the Great Lakes. Therefore, we are connected to birds too. I hope you've enjoyed this class. I hope you've gotten something good out of it. And if nothing else, I hope that you've just had some fun. Birding is an awesome hobby. It's a great way to get outside. It's an awesome way to improve your physical health, your mental health. And of course, it's really important for us to understand the birds so that we can care for them. So thanks for joining us.